Barbara's off to guard Gotham. Here's your look at the brand new McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Gotham Knights Batgirl. Few people can match Barbara Gordon in terms of raw willpower and determination. Barbara has always been a person of action. In her mind, backing down is never an option. Being the daughter of Gotham City's police commissioner had a massive impact on her. Jim Gordon gave his life for Gotham, and now she wants to make sure it wasn't in vain. After a face-off that put Barbara in a wheelchair, she became Oracle, a powerful information and communications expert. With extensive training and rehabilitation, she recovered from her wounds and returned to active duty as Batgirl. Barbara is highly trained in a variety of fighting styles such as kickboxing, capoeira, and jiu-jitsu. Her signature weapon is the tonfa. Barbara also displays great skill when it comes to hacking or coding in computers and technological systems to dig for information. Just before we get a closer look at Gotham Knights Batgirl, grabbing the trusty ruler of mine, we're going to figure out how tall the figure stands. According to the measurements here, Batgirl, slightly smaller, stands 6 3/4 of an inch tall, or 17 centimeters tall. Adding yet another Batgirl to the collection space, as we already have received 2 Batgirls before. Just recently, we had a look at the Batgirl from the Batman 3 Joker's line, side-eye and all. In fact, the way that she's side-eyeing Batgirl from Gotham Knights, it looks like she's just full of utter disgust in her. And a while ago, we also had a look at this Batgirl too. One that we did bring in when we had a look at the Batman 3 Joker's Batgirl, but this is the one from the Art of the Crime. Still a nice looking Batgirl too. Now, when you have all 3 of these Batgirls on the shelf, or even in this review, you'll already see one thing very apparent about the Gotham Knights Batgirl is not only is she quite a bit shorter, but her proportions seem quite off too, especially when you look at the size of her feet. While all of you are staring at Barbara Gordon's feet, let's instead look at the accessories to come include with the figure. Starting first, a trading card. Now, in this case, could there be an exception to the rule? There's not. Now, while you may look at this and think that this is a screen grab from the actual game, in actual fact, you can see up close and personal that there are visible joints here on the figure. What's funny, though, is that the head sculpt seems like it's not from this figure. In fact, it looks like it's from the game, but yet the rest of the body, it's just a weird thing. It's an amalgamation of stuff, really. I can easily see that there's a joint there in the elbow, but that face doesn't look like the figure, unless it was just very, very smart lighting that they've used. And also something that you'll see as well is that the boots are completely the wrong color. Right here, wrong on the figure. On the back of the card, by the way, probably one of the more lengthier read-ups. You can imagine the chore it was for me to read that at the beginning of the review. Yeah, I did read this at the beginning of the review. And also, of course, right above that is her real name, Barbara Gordon. I'm going to hold on to this. Actually, it's one of the better cards that we've gotten recently. The figure also comes included with a display stand, and we're going to spend very little time talking about the display stand, having already covered off that territory. It's a black circular stand with the DC logo down below, and one peg that's going to attach the underside of Barbara Gordon's feet. That's it. That's all we're going to talk about. Figure also comes included with a tonfa. The neat thing about the tonfa, or club, is the fact that this one electrifies. You can't really see that here on the molded version of it, but you have to take my word for it. It's nicely sculpted, although, like all the other cases that we've seen before, the accessory is way too thick. You'll see it even more so, a painful reminder if you try to really get this into the figure's hands. First of all, her hands are really small. And again, really tiny feet. That makes things even more difficult when it comes to trying to get the tonfa and get that displayed in her hand. I like to really display it with the longer end of the tonfa facing against her arm. And again, you just sort of put that into her hands as best as you can. It's not an easy chore. It's not an easy thing to do. It feels really more so like a chore. Just get it in between her fingers. Such an ordeal. Ask myself sometimes when I'm spending so much time trying to get these accessories in their figure's hand, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing? Spending so much time trying to get these accessories in these figures' hands, especially from McFarlane. Those are some of the, you know what, we're going to do this hand instead. I think I've already broken in the fingers just a little bit. There we go. Can you see what I'm already talking about here? We're asking a lot of these hands. Look at this. Look at this. Look at the size of that handle, and look at the little tiny digits that have to support this. That tonfa, and across the board, we're going to brush very broad strokes across all of these accessories. They're way too big, way too thick. Poor Barbara Gordon. I mean, she just doesn't have the hands suitable for holding a tonfa of this size. Anyways, rant aside. You can display the figure, of course, like this. You can have it spun around the other way as well. I prefer to have the lengthier end of it running parallel to her arm. Just, it's nonsense. Trying to fit such a large accessory into the figure's tiny little hands. We're going to put that to the side for right now. Getting a closer look now at Gotham Knights Batgirl. It's not a bad-looking figure, but I feel it lacks a lot in paint. Head sculpt-wise, it's not terrible. It looks like somebody, and I've tried my best to try to pinpoint who it is, and I'm drawing an absolute blank. If anybody has any ideas, certain angles, it sort of looks a little like Neve Campbell. I know that's not the actress I'm thinking of when I'm looking at this. If anybody has certainly some ideas as to who you think this looks like, please let me know down below in the comment section. We can have fun and discuss that for a little while. Paint is pretty good, but I feel like it could have been better. The darker coloring of her skin, I feel it's way too muddy. She also does happen to have side eye. This one eye, what's funny about it, looks like it's looking almost right at you, while this eye looks like it's almost looking off to the side. I wonder if she's seeing someone on the side. That's a terrible joke. Whether it's a lazy eye or not, there's something not quite right to this one eye, because, like, again, this eye's okay. This eye looks like, unless you have it tilted to the side where you don't see as much that imperfection, it looks so strange to really see that one eye looks like it's off, way off to the side, and the other eye is perfectly fine. I'm still trying to think of who that actress, who this looks like. She has more of the now new Batgirl's design, so she's not really hiding much of anything when it comes to her identity. Literally just it's a mask, and then she's got these pointed ears that stick out the back. Hair is sculpted well enough. I don't really have any complaints with the hair. They've used what seems like more than one color, so not only do you have the more orangey brown, but there's like these little strands, these little bunches right here of a much brighter orange. I mean, I can't complain from a head sculpt standpoint, but I feel like there's something just lacking, I think, in the paint. Believe you me, that's going to carry over when we look at the rest of the figure's body. Now, when looking at the figure's body, I like the purple, and I like the design of it, and for this, I'm actually going to bring back in the trading card, not something we tend to do a lot here on this channel. And why I bring this in, first of all, does that look like the same head sculpt? Yeah, the arms are the same, but I almost feel as if they've done something to doctor the head sculpt, as it clearly doesn't look like it's the exact same. Something also very apparent, too, is the lacking of paint that is on the body. Like, for the front of it, you've got the purple, which is fine. It mirrors that the way that the game design is. But what is sorely lacking here, especially down the side, dividing areas of the purple and then that meshing of the darker coloring, there should be a panel line right there of yellow. And it's probably a little harder to see here on the actual figure card. You may be able to see a little bit of it. In fact, actually, the way that they've lit this, it looks like the inner sections of her thighs are actually yellow. They're not supposed to be. But, like, there should be really a panel lining right here. And the biggest culprit in all of the paint being lacking in this figure is when it comes to the boots. Now, going online and seeing several different designs of Batgirl, she either has tied-up laced boots, which run higher than what we get right here. They should go to about here, and they should have laces. The other design of the character, of course, more closer to the card, has yellow boots that go up to here. And as you can already see, it's been left off completely when it comes to painting the figure. I don't know why they've left it off, unless there's a third skin for Batgirl in the game, where she actually just has these little tiny shoes. Like, it doesn't seem like it's right. I would have gone instead with the more higher, kind of calf-high boots, where they would have done this all in yellow. I don't know why they've only left it just to the feet, which really even more hones into the idea that they're super microscopic in size. Look at the size of these shoes. I'm just going to bring in the other Batgirl, the most recent one that we've looked at, the one from... Now, you could argue the point that maybe this Batgirl has perhaps too large of a foot, but just to kind of put in perspective the size of this Batgirl's feet versus the size that we're getting from Gotham Knights. It's quite laughable, in fact. I mean, look at the size of these feet. These look like these should be toddler shoes, and yet they're on Batgirl. Admittingly, yeah, the figures themselves, this one's scaled a lot smaller, but not to the point where I think that justifies little tiny feet on the bottom of Barbara Gordon's legs. She does have, of course, the utility belt. It's not the cleanest of paints. I mean, you can see one side's a little bit better than the other. This, unfortunately, is lacking a lot of paint. It's funny, that's cleaner on the back, but there's a lot of splotched areas where the paint just unfortunately has been left right off. And there is nothing really other than just the sculpting of the plastic on the back of the figure. She also is very flat. Flat in a profile. I mean, like her flatter behind. I mean, the way that they've built the body, she's very, very slender, small, and very undersized in proportions. Like really tiny hands, really tiny feet. She has a little tiny cape, but that's, of course, going more to the design of the character. The cape is fairly rubbery, and they've added sort of a slick coat to it to kind of give it that look of almost like leather. But it has a sheen to it, of course, as you can see. The studio lights are bouncing off of it. I feel it's almost maybe a little too shiny, and yet, at least, to the cape's credit, it gets a lot more paint here than it does anywhere else on the rest of the body. And what there is paint, it's either just lacking and left off completely on the lower legs, or in this case, like a utility belt, and even like the emblem, really could have used a lot of necessary extra paint. A few extra coats, please. Don't just leave it at one coat and call it a day. Go back, dedicate a few extra coats on top of it. Now, I'm far from somebody that's designed and produced figures my own. I would imagine the cost of producing, but still, if you're going to be releasing figures, finish the job. You know, commit to this completely. We're not just going to be dating this figure. Marry it for a long period of time. Let's look at the articulation here on Batgirl. Head rotates back and forth. It hinges up and hinges down. And I am trying my best to rotate this, but you can already see there's limitations. There's limitations just by the length of her hair. You can still rotate it, to be fair, and yeah, you can rotate it all the way around, but it's really restricted when it comes to having the head looking up. Looking down isn't so much the issue. It's looking up beyond this point that really is the issue. Shoulders come out comfortably at 90 degrees. You can take it as well, the arms, and rotate them all the way around. Her shoulders, you may also have seen as well, stick further out. See that? So she doesn't actually have that. Her socket joint, right in there concealing the joint of her shoulders, is further in. And when you are moving the arms, you'll already see, like the tops of her shoulders, softer plastic, sort of bend as well. I guess it's not too bad. I mean, you can still bend the arms. You can take the arms and rotate them all the way around. That's really where you see fighting against that rubber of the shoulders. She does have a swivel. And she does also have a double hinge on the elbow. That's good. And the hands also, of course, rotate all the way around, back and forth. Upper torso. Now, here's the thing. It's not an upper torso in the sense that you would expect a cut to be right here. No, not at all. The cut is actually further down. I'm assuming they probably did this because they wanted to keep the body of the torso look seamless. But I think they could have also afforded to put a cut right there and make an upper torso ball joint instead of relying on all of this being the ball joint, the main torso being the sole ball joint. It's also slightly softer plastic. As for the legs, again, you're going to have this issue I've noticed with the legs. They have that lower rubbery diaper that they sort of put over top of the legs. It conceals the joint, yes, but a lot of times when you are going to be rotating the legs, I noticed this especially on Batgirl, rotating the legs sort of start pinching this part in, and you sort of sometimes have to fish this back out, or sort of have to then move the legs a bit until finally you can get this part of the lower torso to come back out. Legs go forward, legs go back. There is, of course, a swivel on the top, just the way it's been assembled. A double hinge on the knee. And then for Batgirl's boots, painted or otherwise, she only has an ankle pivot back and forth this way. And back and forth this way. And again, you got the toe articulation. Tiny, tiny little feet. What size would that even be? I don't buy women's shoes, so I really don't know. Very small looking Batgirl. Again, like proportion-wise, I understand like she's supposed to be like the build of like a younger girl. So, okay, that's one thing. But like her hands and her feet more so are way too small. Especially again, when you're comparing it with say the likes of side-eye Batgirl, which I guess really she isn't the only sole side-eye Batgirl. And you also compare it with like this Batgirl. While you could say that they're both wearing boats for footwear, they at least have larger sized feet. Batgirls here, I think, are way too small. And actually, one other comparison we didn't make at the beginning of this review, freeing up a little bit of space, bringing in another Gotham Knights alumni. Here's what Batgirl would have looked like also with Red Hood. There we go. He also has properly proportioned footwear. Yeah, I'm not really sure how I feel about the Batgirl. I like the design of it, but I feel like there's a lot that got left off here, more so when it comes to the paint. The boots, I feel, should have been more yellow, further up on the calf. And there's a lot of areas where what there is paint and what little there is of it, the paint really hasn't been handled well. It really needed to use more than one coat. So they needed to use more than one coat. And it doesn't seem to be the case. It looks like they painted it once in yellow and just called it a day. I mean, we all know we've been dealing with these overly thick accessories this whole time, so nothing is really new here with Batgirl. But you would like to think if they're going to be giving this figure slightly smaller sculpted hands, that they would also reduce the size of the thickness for these accessories too. Because that tonfa is really going to be a struggle when you pick this figure up for yourself and you're trying to put it into the figure's hands. The figure's hands are way too small. And it only even more is a reminder to you why these accessories have to be so thick in the first place. Draw your attention, if I can, to the far right. You'll see on the back of the box, that's just an oversized card that would have come included with the figure. I feel there's something going on here with the way that they've designed that card. Part of me thinks that that's the figure, like the arms more so. But then when you look at the rest of the figure, especially the head sculpt and the torso, it doesn't look like it's the same figure. Or it looks like this may have been a prototype and then something got lost along the ways. If maybe communication was the key, something got lost, unfortunately, when it came to mass producing this figure. Because what we get on the back of the box and the back and the front of the card is a nice looking Batgirl. What we get actually here, I feel, is almost rushed. Paint gets either left off, as I mentioned. I mean, you can even see for yourself. She's got painted boots on the back of the box, and in the figure, we're just getting yellow plastic feet. Small plastic feet. And even like the feet don't look like the same ones that we're getting on the back. What sort of Frankenstein figure is being presented on this trading card? And yeah, again, the paint that they've actually have put on the figure, few and far between, just doesn't feel like it's completely finished. That utility belt really is broken in a lot of places. Spatchy, splotchy areas of paint really could have afforded a lot more. It almost seems like they've put more time and paint and effort into painting the cape than they did all the other yellow parts on the figure. There's not a lot of yellow to go around, so you'd like to think, if anything, the yellow that is actually on this figure, they would have maybe made a few more passes than just the one. Nice looking Batgirl on the box. What we get actually as an actual Batgirl figure is small, off proportioned, and just really lacking a lot of paint. It's a good figure if you don't mind the shortcomings of the figure. I'm not just pointing out to the fact that she's a small figure to start off with. If you don't mind the shortcomings, it's an acceptable enough Batgirl to go on your shelf. But I would say almost, based on the other ones that we've already looked at, the other two Batgirls, the Art of the Crime, and then the one just recently we looked at of the three Jokers, I feel are better examples of Batgirl than what we get right here. This one, at least to its credit, is closer to being the Batgirl of Burnside, which is still the figure I wish that McFarlane Toys will release at some point. Still my all-time favorite design of Batgirl. Maybe we might. I mean, they could maybe use some of the elements maybe from this figure. But if they do release a Batgirl of Burnside, I hope they fix the problems of the paint that this figure unfortunately has a lot of. What do you guys think, though, of Gotham Knights Batgirl? Let me know down below in the comments section. And if you are new to this channel, of course, if you're enjoying like to think that you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and yes, keep peepers peeled while we have wrapped up things here for the Gotham Knights Batgirl. We are actually going to be looking at the Gotham Knights Robin and Gotham Knights Nightwing coming up in a couple of reviews, so make sure, yes, you're keeping your peepers peeled. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.